All right, well, it looks like it's going to rain. Starting tonight, it's going to rain all week and maybe into the weekend. So I was wanting to work on the two-door post quarter panel again, but I had the four-door sitting out here and it rutted up the yard. I'm going to have to go in there and fix that with a shovel and a rake and stuff. But that part of the yard holds water real bad, and so it's going to be rather difficult to get the two-door out of there. I need to remove this quarter panel and I need to remove this door skin. So I quit early on Steve's car, and it's about 3 o'clock, so I work most of the day on it. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get this quarter panel and everything and the door off of this car before it rains. And if I can get this off and it ain't rained yet, I might try to dig the two-door body out of the fenced area. It may sink over here, but I'd like to switch places with these because I won't be needing this for my weekend project idea. But I don't know when the rain's going to start, but it's supposed to be tonight, so I may work until dark. I'll break for dinner, but I may work until dark and try to get all this going. So this is kind of interesting. The tail pan is actually good on this car, the tail pan itself. I melted the lead out of this seam here. So in case you don't know, there is lead in the seams of these cars. When they're spot welded together, all these panels, they used lead, and it was in here. It's right here where the strip of paint is, all through here, and it's up here. And there's some down there. I melted that out Sunday down there. I'm not going to worry about melting this one out because I'm going to cut it up in here. The two-door's been seamed right in here somewhere, so I'm going to go out further. Now on these, where this is spot welded on, I went through here and I did it with some sandpaper on my finger, and you can kind of make out where all the spot welds are. So I started drilling it with an 1/8 inch drill bit all the way through. Now generally, if you're trying to save, like if this was the car I was putting the quarter panel piece back on, I wouldn't drill a pilot hole through it. So on this car, I don't care about the back panel, so I'm just going to go ahead and drill all the way through. And then when I go to drill it bigger, it has basically a pilot, so I don't have to worry about this under panel because I'm not going to be using it. So I want to drill all these spot welds all the way over, and I'm trying to decide here where to cut it, because when I put this car back together, oh, there's lead here too, by the way, down this center. I will not be using this flange. I'm going to do it like my hardtop, and I'll cut all these flanges out and I will butt weld strips of steel in there evenly, so there is not going to be any lead seams. Well, I got the quarter panel cut off. I got me a good base measurement off the belt and off the main straight part of the flange. So I wrote everything down. So this wheel well lip down here was actually bent in a pretty little tight spot. So I tried to work it out before I cut the quarter panel off, and then I just, because it's so tight of a hit, it was like right on this rolled edge right here. So I ended up just going ahead and slicing it off. That way I can lay this down on a dolly and I can really get in there with my hammers and shape this correctly, and I can reshape the other part that meets up to this to be correct. So then I'll just weld it back together. Anyway, I'll have to take that crap off the back of that, and I'll have to shave this down more, and to get this to, because I'll have to butt weld this to the actual door skin. Once I get the door skin off, this will have to be welded to that. So I'm gonna grind the edge of this until it opens up basically, and at that point I'll just have the outer skin that I can weld to that. But I'll shape this better, because I actually, I cut it wide when I go to take it off. Anyway, I have the quarter panel off. it's a shame I didn't have the camera on. So I had a little spot here that was, I didn't quite have the edge ground away enough to split it, so I used a scraper and I stuck it down in there and I hit it with a hammer and it tapped it off there, and then it just fell. So that makes it kind of nice. So I have this upside down, and I wanted to show how I did that. And some guys know this, it's put skins on before, but some people haven't. So your door skin is put on over your inner structure, and it's folded around the back side. So this is actually the fold from the back. It just slipped down because it was on the bottom, so it fell. But anyway, I got under there and I was trying to grind that, and you can almost see where it's trying to split right there. So that's how I did the side there. It just was grinding it until you see it open up, and then it generally just falls right off. But I didn't have that one all the way through because I was on my back trying to do it upside down without actually looking at it. All right guys, so got the lid all removed out of both sides. Screw broke off there, of course. I'm actually trying to figure out how I'm going to go about this because things have kind of changed. I found a little bit more bad on the two-door post body, so I'm trying to decide exactly what to do. I'm still debating whether I want to do the hardtop windshield and lower the roof down to it enough, wedge cut it basically. I just haven't decided if I'm going to fully do that, because I really wanted to do that with the Ford ribbed roof, and I haven't located a Ford ribbed roof. I haven't really looked that hard either, but so I'm kind of paused at this moment in time. But I'll show you what I'm talking about on the two-door. This is you know, it's not great news, but it's still fixable at the end of the day. So I removed the front clip off this two-door post 55, you know, a little over a week ago, and it wasn't really bolted on anyway. It was just kind of sitting on there. But anyway, I pulled it off, and that's what was hiding behind the fender. So this cowl section is smashed in. I mean, looking at it, you know, this piece right here itself, it just spot welds on. So this could be removed, and this could probably be pulled back out. And then this piece off the four-door, you know, drill the spot welds out and everything, and then put it in there. But this body mount right here is actually bent. It's supposed to be straight, and that's bent over. So it's had a little bit of a tweak put in it. Also, where the hood hinge goes on, this is crushed back, and it's actually rusted through in places. And it's the same way on the other side. It's crushed back a little bit. So then when I got to looking at this, it might be hard to see. This is actually going like this right here. This kicks up right here. This is no longer straight. It's also rotted out here. And then when you come over here and look at the A-pillar, that is not good. It's not good at all. So in my opinion, along with that up there, I think I'm just going to take the all of the whole cowl, dash, A-pillars and all out of the 4-door, take this out and replace it with it. So I'm basically going to put the 4-door front forward cowl section on here. I think it'd be the easiest, best way to fix it. So the dashes are welded in, they don't bolt in on these cars, so that's why I'm thinking about, you know, just cutting the A-pillar up there and changing it all. But instead of going in and replacing piece by piece by piece by piece, I think it would be just as fast to use the 4-door, because I'm using the whole panel. And this is the part where I talked about wedge cutting the roof before. I think if I'm going to do that anyway, you know what I mean? And even if I don't do it, I still think it's the easiest way to go. But I got to tell you, I've never replaced a cowl on a Tri-5 before, the whole cowl like this. So this is, you know, getting out of my comfort zone. I'm not scared of it. It's only metal. I can weld it back together. But you know, if I do decide to take it all loose, I'll go back in and reinforce the inside of the structure better and do, you know, drill holes and plug weld and you know, perimeter weld and all that kind of stuff too, to make it, you know, overly strong, than way more strong than what it was originally probably. But you know, this is kind of the game changer for the whole project here, because I didn't really notice that till the clip was off of it. And then I never really looked the car over really deep close, and I didn't pay attention to this. So, and again, that all could be repaired, but it's gonna have to be fixed layer by layer. So I would rather just replace the cowl. And you know, like I stated before, I love metalwork. I like a challenge. I like a big challenge, and to me, I just think it's the easiest way to go. Then I don't have a bunch of crap that's all beat up and rusted out, you know what I mean? So I think I'm going to continue on with the quarter panel and get all of it put on. Then I'll go through and change the cowl out, because at that point I can pull the door back off, because the jamb will be fixed where it needs to be. And then I can weld braces in here and build saddles up here at the forward part, so when I put the new cowl on, it'll go into the saddle, you know what I mean? I'll weld it back here, and I'll have to put bracing all in the car, and have to be braces across and up and down and all kinds of stuff, so it doesn't get all wiggly on me and stuff. But it's kind of turned into a huge project, you know what I mean? But I knew it was rough and rusty, and it's just part of it. When you tear into a car, it's a can of worms. And that's why a normal shop, a regular shop, if you flat rated this restoration job to somebody, their shop, you know, if they gave you a flat rate price, they would be buried in it, and your car would be in body shop jail or metalwork jail for years. Because that's generally what happens when people flat rate a job. It ends up sticking around forever and ever and ever. So, you know, there's no way I flat rate stuff anymore. It's all by the hour, because when you remove one panel, there's going to be rust behind it that you have to repair first before you put the panel you removed the first time back on. And I'll show you what I mean. So on the inside of this structure of this, when I just cut this window out here, the whole quarter's coming off, but this in here is crusty. Now this is mainly just surface, so this will look amazing when it's all blasted. This will look really, really nice, and then I can coat it. But right down there, if you can see that right here, it's rusted out. So when this quarter comes off, I'll have to go in there and cut a square out and put a piece in there to repair that. So that'll have to be repaired first before the quarter goes back on. So that's the way it usually is. When you take one outer piece off, you'll usually find more. So, and that's the way the cowl would be. If I say I remove this outer cowl piece right here, this part, if I remove that, there's going to be rust behind that, and I'll have to go through and patch and fix, you know, build all those patch panels and fix all that before I can, you know, put the other piece back on. So I think it'd be better to just replace the whole dang thing. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I can see a rust hole right here, so when this windshield comes out, there's no telling how much more is going to be up in here. And you know, I don't know how the pinch weld is up here. It's good on the 4-door. So anyway, I will make it through this for sure. But you you know, it'll definitely make some cool content for the channel. So here's another little issue I ran into. So this rear quarter piece has been put on. This is most likely from a 4-door. I mean, I don't know, but I would assume it would be. Anyway, they've cut it off over here, and they did probably plug weld it on here, because the flange under here, you can kind of see where it's kind of ripply, where they didn't straighten it out too well, and it's rustier at here. Anyway, when you get up under here and look, it's pretty rough, man. So I removed this section from the 4-door 55, but anyway, it has this kick up on this flange. It rolls up right here, so I had to go in there and bend all that down to get my air hammer in there to knock that off, and it ruined that flange. And I didn't think to look at this to see how good it was. So anyway, I'm gonna have to try to straighten that out or cut it off another car or something. And this one may not be too bad. Once I get up in there, I could repair it, but I'll just wait until I get this quarter piece off. But there is a lot of work to do on this car, but again, I think it's going to be fun. It's definitely channel content, you know what I mean? MIG wire and MIG gas is cheap. Okay, hopefully I didn't lose too much GoPro footage with it freezing, but I'll bet I did. So I just ended up chopping off, most of it was rusted away down through there anyway, so I just went ahead and chopped off the ends of the braces and everything. So pretty much I'm going to pull out the whole rocker, because I'm going to be trying to use the outer skin pieces on the 2-door. So I'm going to have to do a lot of repair to this and everything. But anyway, I've got the cowl kind of braced up, and I just used crap that I had here. Some of it's pretty rusty crap, and then some of it's pretty decent, I guess. I can always reuse it after I cut it back out. So I got the forward body mounts out, and I've got everything else loose, so it's pretty much ready. It would come up, I think. So yeah, this car well, it was pretty easy to cut up because it was pretty much rusted away. That B-pillar, as soon as I cut the roof off, fell down. The only just the outer piece was all that was left holding it on. But she's pretty rusty, man. I'll make something out of it though. I think I'm just going to use this whole cowl on the two-door because this is in pretty nice shape. Just, I don't think it would be that difficult of a job to do. I have never replaced a cowl on a Tri-5, let me make that clear, but I mean, I've got a pretty good idea how to do it. I've cut cars up and put them back together before, but I've just never done a cowl on a Tri-5 Chevy. I'll have to do a lot of disassembly on some of the metal braces, and I have to drill a bunch of spot welds out and clean everything off and do a bunch of that. I think I'm going to try to repair these toe boards. These toe boards are actually not terrible on this car, but it's like the lower part next to the pinch weld is bad. So I think I'll go in there and just repair all that with new sheet metal, butt welded in, and grind both sides. And then I'll have a good start off for the floor, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a taller trans tunnel with that 5-speed. I think they're a little bit taller. So anyway, right now I'm trying to figure out how to get the cowl and rockers off of this, and then I want to continue cutting this thing up into pieces and get it off the frame pretty much. I'd love to get that two-door out here in place of this to get this out of the way, but I need to get this disassembled first, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it. So my buddy Scott Smith's coming over to pick up his Chevelle fender. Maybe I can talk him into doing a little bit of labor. We'll see. All right, so this is the aftermath here. This is the whole cowl off the four-door with the rockers. So I went in and I braced it up, and it is very, very stout. Like the whole thing moves with the way I have it braced up, and I just used a bunch of scrap brace pieces I have here. So anyway, that's exactly how I'm going to install it in this car. I'm going to leave these rockers on here. These will have to have a little bit of repair on the tops, but I'm building my own custom floor pans and braces, so not too worried about that. So what I am going to do, that rocker over there, by the way, looks like it's been picked up with a forklift. I don't really know, it's just one spot, but it's smacked in there pretty good. And then the back side of the rockers are, you know, they're not in too good a shape. This one is not too bad, except right here where the brace was. But what I'm going to do is just kind of what all the pro shops do. All they care about is the outer body shell and the rockers. That's all they care about. They don't care about the floors. They don't care about anything else, because they do an aftermarket chassis. They do custom floor pans. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I am going to drill all the spot welds out of the back side of the rockers here, this piece here, and I'm going to remove that entire thing. And then I'll go in, like that side, I'll have to go in and repair, you know, hammer all this back out and get it all back straightened out. But once the outer rockers are cleaned up and they're, you know, the backside's gone, at that point I'm going to put in some pretty thick plate here. I'm going to have to go to the steel supplier next week. I've got to get some steel for Steve's shifter bracket I'm going to make in the floor, little riser plate. So I'm going to grab some of this while I'm there. And I'm basically going to do my own back side of the rockers, but I'm going to use some very thick pieces. And what that's going to do is it'll allow me to build my subfloor off of that out of 1x2, and then I can sheet metal over the top of the 1x2. So I'm basically doing my own bracing and everything across the floor and over the tunnel and all that. It'll just all be hand built. So anyway, it's going to be a pretty extensive fabrication job, but I'm going to enjoy every minute of it, I promise. Alright guys, so what I'm going to do is I've got the front end jacked up, so I am going to put jack stands under the main part of the chassis at the front, like right up here at the front on both sides, and then I'm going to do the rear. Then I'm going to go through and use a bubble level on the bottom of the frame rail, up here and across the back on the rear one, and on the other side, and I'm going to make sure it's 0. So what I'll probably end up having to do is jack stuff back up, and I'll probably have to shim up the jack stands, because I'm basically trying to use a driveway as a frame table to try to make sure that the frame is level, and that'll just kind of help, you know, as I'm going through here to do this. These chassis on these cars are flexible. There's no center support, so they're designed to flex a little bit. So the problem is, like if you got, like this car has different size tires all the way around. Like this is a smaller tire than that size. I think this is one size smaller than the other side. And this morning the tire was flat. So if you went in there and tried to do metal work on big parts like I'm doing, with the car kind of, you know, angled and stuff, it's probably not going to fit quite correctly once it's put back, you know, aired up tires and all that kind of stuff. It's probably going to change it a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and level it out with jack stands and show them up until the bubble level's level. And then that way I'll feel a little bit more comfortable continuing on. So what I'm going to basically start on as I get it leveled, after I get it leveled, is I'm going to go ahead and cut the bottom of this off, because for whatever reason, and it's just a difference in the stamping. So when I aligned the door on the car, there's only 2 points that I care about, technically 3, but there's only those that I care about. That is this body line right here. I want that to go in perfectly with this one. So I want these two to be identical, and also these right here. So I want the belt to match, but I want this to go perfectly into that, so that it does. And then I don't really care about this up here because this is always goofy on a Tri-5. Look how close this is right now. See how tight that is right there, and how this gap is pretty tight right here, but it's straight. It's a nice straight gap right here on this post. So this I can go through and grind down until it separates, clamp it back together and weld it. I can basically gap this to do it perfectly. That's the way I did my wife's four-door. So the other spot you want to look at is right here. You want to make sure this line right here to your cowl is good. This has had trauma, and this is kind of tweaked a little bit, but overall it's fairly straight. It just kind of kinked it up a little bit. So I wanted to make sure this line was good, because when you hang the front clip, you want to make sure that this line carries on through the fender, because the fender sits right here. So you want to make sure that line continues on like that. I have seen these out and the fender in. I've seen the fender in and this out. So just be aware of that. But anyway, right now this is good. This body line's good, and this body line's good. So I know that this B-pillar, with this being in line perfectly right here, I know this up here is where it needs to be. However, when you get down here, the door's touching. So if I was to drop that B-pillar piece down, that body line would not line up anymore with the body. So that is a variance you need to watch out for. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this off and then continue on, and then I'll go back in later and piece this piece back in. I may just even build a new one. It just depends. So I do have to cut the end off of this anyway because it's rusty. But I'm going to be welding the door to this jam piece with a little piece of steel in between there. I've already got a few pieces. They're right there, a little bit rusty now from it being rained in the other day. But I'm going to place them blocks, cut them down, put little blocks in here, and then I'm going to weld them all up after I cut this off. That way I can resituate this to where it's perfect on the door. Then I'm going to start scabbing in the quarter panel. And this is where it'll be, that's where it'll kind of get fun. Now I'm going to hang the rear quarter panel first, because there's only kind of one way that this is going to go on. This up here is all in a piece that I'm putting in. So this can be trimmed to fit perfectly. So I want to put this in next. So basically I did the jam piece, then I'll do this piece. And the reason is, where I cut this off the four-door, drilled the spot welds, it has a flange on it. So that quarter panel's not going to go forward or backward, hardly at all, because once that flange meets the other flange on the body, that's where it's going to be. So that's why I'm going to do the rear next. I've still got to finish up the bottom of that B-pillar piece. But anyway, this is the quarter that's cut off. Now, here is the biggest problem that people run into when they're doing patch panels. A lot of guys will flange them, you know, use a flanging tool and they'll flange it in there, and then you have a deep space in there, and I've seen guys put filler in there. And I have seen a couple of cars in my time that had the panels flanged and the fillers cracked in them. So what I am doing is I left a little bit, which I've got to trim some more, but I'm leaving a little bit of the actual jam from the four-door, just a little bit. And the reason I left that is because that's tight. That's what's keeping this crown correct right here. If I cut this off, cut that flange off, this thing would just be pancake down like this. It would do that. This is not going to do that. So I left that flange on there. So I'll be butt welding this to that flange, because you're not going to see that on the back side of the quarter. So when I do take the quarter back off, I'll be able to go in there and work on that some more. but this is kind of where I'm at on that. This is going to dictate the correct crown and the quarter at the front. That back there is where it needs to be. Now this is pretty rough, and I haven't decided. I may just end up cutting this off right up through here, like right here, and over and down, and get rid of all this beat up garbage and put in that other little quarter panel piece from the other quarter that I bought from the salvage that was already off. Because I could go in here and beat the living crap out of this, but at the end of the day, it's going to weaken up the metal because it's already weak, it's already stretched, it's already jacked up. I would rather go in and butt weld it, grind it, and be done with it. So I'm just going to do that. But anyway, I got to work on this flange here. You know, this is going to need a little tweaking. There's a high spot here. There's a high spot here. So I'm going to, that's the perfect thing about having the quarter off, is I can turn it upside down and over and, you know, and work it over. I will put sawhorses out here. So I did have 2 tables, and I can't find the other table, and I usually leave it out here with the 4-door, but I'm thinking at this point somebody must have took it, because I can't find it. Then I got this piece on here that I'm going to have to put back on. That'll, you know, eventually get welded to this. So I've got some work to do, but that's the plan. So right now I'm going to go ahead and work on that B-pillar, try to get it finalized after I get it level. All right, so I got 5.5 inches from the very jam edge right here out. So I just measured 5.5 and put a mark there. So now I've got my cross mark. So now with my 3/4 inch tape up here, right before the taper, I'm going to stretch this out to right there. Put it right up to the edge of that 3/4 tape, which is right there. There's my cut line. All right guys, so I got my 5.5 inches out to here, and then I used the straight edge up to my 3/4 inch tape mark, and so I have my line. I drew right along the edge of that 3/4 inch masking tape, so there's my line. I wanted half, I just couldn't find any half locally, and I didn't want to drive downtown for a $5 roll of masking tape. So I wanted to be a little bit closer to this, because the closer you are to a pressed flange like that, the tighter the metal will be, and you'll have less warpage. So the further you get out, like if way out in here, I call this the middle of the ocean, and this is where you're going to get waves, because it is the ocean, by the way. Anyway, metal is very easy to tweak and warp when you're welding and grinding, when you're out in the middle of nowhere without a flange. So anyway, the majority of my cuts I like to put here. And I'll tell you, the rule of thumb on replacing sheet metal on a car is to keep as much original metal as you can. So if you got a little bitty spot down here, and you bought that whole lower patch panel, you need to replace just that spot. Of course, you need to find good metal around it. You need to replace just that spot, because in this one's case, none of these flanges are the same. They don't match the original OE flanges. So it's best to use as much original as you can. Now when I did the quarters on my car, I did it just like this. I cut it out here, and I just used the outer skin pieces, because I know the flanges aren't going to be correct. I know all this ain't going to be correct. So I just used basically a center insert, and I even cut it just like this. Cut it right down here past the flange, so I know it's going to fit. I think I did leave the lower where it welds to the pinch weld, and I did have to work on that, I do believe. But I had to replace the quarters on my 55 because it had accident damage back here, and this one has too. This is pretty common. I've seen this several times actually. All right guys, what I've got here is a Cut 40. It's a plasma cutter, and it was bought from Jegs, as you can see. So when you're doing a search at Jegs, you just put in cut 40, because my friend Scott Smith went over there, and when he put in cut 40, it automatically come up plasma cutter. These things are under 300 bucks, and I bought this, I don't even know, 8, 9, 10 years ago. This was a wonderful investment. These are awesome to have for the hobbyist. You know, you're not going to be cutting up skyscrapers with it because it doesn't cut super huge thick metal. But anyway, you have to have air going into the back, and I will recommend putting on a filter. I've got a little, you know, cheapy little filter, desiccant filter back here, because you do not want water from your air lines going in here. So you guys at home like me that don't have professional plumbed water trap systems, you need to run a filter before you put it in here, because it will damage it. I will say, when I bought mine, I bought an extra set of tip and a cup and all that stuff as a set. And when this came in, it came with an extra set. So I ended up with 2 sets, which was kind of nice, because I ended up changing it the other day when I used it. But it's a basic plasma cutter, and I've used the crap out of this, and I love it. It works fantastic, as you'll see when I cut this off. But right now, I've got to go find my sunglasses, because I don't have a, you know, a proper, like, cutting torch set of goggles. But I'll use sunglasses, and then I'll see daylight when I blink for about the next 2 minutes afterwards. So I forgot a lead seam back here, and I didn't want to take the plasma through there with lead. It would have made a mess. But anyway, I still have to remove a flange and stuff, but it'll be easier to get to once this is out of my way. In theory. There's another good case in point of a can of worms when you cut into them. This is rusted out along the bottom. So this piece is going to have to be replaced from the 4-door. Let's see here. This is actually not in too bad a shape, but I cut through the flange a little bit with the plasma, so I think I'll just drill the spot welds and use the one off the 4-door, because it's nice. There's a spot here. This right here, after I get the rest of this off, most likely I'll have to go in here and patch this. I mean, I will have to 100%, but there's probably going to be more behind this because I got filler in there. So I'm going to have to get the rest of this flange off here, because I left this on because it's going to be easier for me to get in there and try to get this off here with an air hammer at this point. But overall, the wheelhouse, I mean, it looks okay other than surface rust. Got some undercoating. That corner's rusted out right there, so this is going to have to be patched. Kind of sucks, man. And I know these wheelhouse seals were on back order, so I'll have to see if they still are or not. I may just reuse the original because I don't really care. It's not that big of a deal for me. It's still pretty soft. I might just clean all the undercoat off and clean that up and just reuse it instead of buying new. Now again, this is my car. Keep that in mind. This is my car. If this was a customer's car, this would get brand new. So I'm redoing the back side of the rockers with plate anyway, but this right here will have to be patched for sure. So, well, that's the first time I've ever seen one of these rusted before, but it is what it is. I'll just have to, you know, a lot of guys at home probably wouldn't even replace that. They'd leave it, but you know, I have a parts car. If I had to go in and buy all this crap aftermarket, it would nickel and dime you to death. But So I'm just going to go ahead and replace it with the 4-door one, because you know, I need to get in here and clean all this up anyway. I need to get in here and knock some of this undercoat off because I need to see what's under here. There could be something hidden that I'm not seeing. I did know there was a, right here, an undercoating's hiding that. So the undercoat's hiding that right there. So that'll have to be patched. And that's actually part of the flange of the wheelhouse. But again, it's all like flat metal stuff. I can go in there and rebuild it, but not that big a deal. Doing them little patches from flat metal, it's pretty simple to butt weld and then, you know, weld it up and grind it. It's pretty simple. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but I kind of enjoy it. But I want to make sure it's, you know, it's foundation wise. I want to make sure it's in good shape. Check out them shackles on this dude, man. That is some shackle extensions. That's the way to get past back in the 80s, when the early 80s and late 70s, when everybody's doing the air shocks and jacking them up real hard. That was the way to get it up there. The bad thing about this is it changes your pinion angle, so I don't want to mess with that. What am I looking at here? I just noticed that. Is that a block of wood on the pinion? It is. There's a block of wood on that pinion. Never seen that before. It's kind of crazy. Oh, it has the round tag on it. Sometimes you find these and the tag is not there. This little tag right here, this little tag, the shape of this tells you what gear ratio you have. And I don't remember what this is, being round. I think there's only a couple of gear ratios for 55, if I remember right. But I think it's 370 and 410 or 411, I don't remember. But I don't usually run stock rear ends, which I'm going to this time, but because of budget. But anyway, this has a round tag. I'll have to find that chart online and see what that is. But yeah, it's first for me seeing wood on that. That's crazy. So I have a lot of individual patching stuff to do, a lot of cleanup to do before the quarter panel can even be put on the car. So this is just part of it when you're restoring a car. This is, when you cut into one, it is a can of worms. And that's why if you flat rate a job, you take it in and you just give them a price, like a total price for restoration, and then you tear into it and you find all this little stuff. Guess what? You're on the dime for it. So I hourly rate everything. I don't flat rate anything anymore. I had a shop back in the late 90s and I learned my lesson, and I'll never flat rate a job again. And it's kind of funny because people still, you know, they still want a price, and I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I won't take on the job if you're that concerned, you know, that you can't swing it, because this is what you get into with these old cars. All right, guys, this is the 4-door. So this rear piece, I'm not 100% sure they're the same from 2-door or 4-door, but I'm thinking they are. This one actually screws on, the 2-door does not. So if anything, I'm probably going to be able to, you know, take this piece and make it work. But the flange is not rusted. The splash shield is awesome. I mean, this is a nice piece right here. 4-door's different at the front, so it's just lobbed off right there, so you don't have none of your lower. But anyway, I'm pretty sure I can use just this piece here, and there's probably only going to be about 15 spot welds to take out, around there. Don't quote me on that. All right, guys, while the GoPro was in the house cooling off and the battery was charging, I come out here and remove this flange. And I mean, it just keeps going and going and going. Now, most likely the reason that this is rusty like it is, like you see real bad scale, like through here, dark stuff. This area right here is what they'd replaced, and this was all leaded in the top channel, and I had to melt it all out. Let's see, that is it right there. So I melted all the lead out, and I could see where their welds were, and anyway, it had some rust holes there. It just, that's really, you know, probably back in the day when they did this, they didn't have any weld through primer to put on there, but Nowadays you can put weld through primer on here, aerosol, spray it on there, and it'll keep this from happening. So I'm going to have to remove this flange, like cut across here, and I'm gonna, actually that whole flange is bad right there. So I'll probably just go ahead and replace a big portion of this all the way down and over from the other car. But I don't expect this side will be that bad. But anyway, this is not too good a shape now. You know, I got a lot of stuff to do before I can actually put the quarter panel on for good. But I'm going to go ahead and straighten this factory flange out and get it back true and straight, even though I'm going to replace it. I'm going to go ahead and straighten this out, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of pre-fit the quarter panel a little bit, just to, I still got some more stuff to remove, but I kind of want to pre-fit it, and I want to make it to where it screws on and off for now, for temporary. And the reason behind that is I can go ahead and have it fitted to where I like it, and then later I can unscrew all the, you know, the self-drilling screws, zap screws is what I call them, remove those, and then I can go in here and repair all this stuff, because I'm going to be replacing this rear wheelhouse area, part of that flange. I got a spot to fix down there. I got a spot to fix on this forward wheel well lip and this piece here. It's kind of strange, the four doors don't have this. I don't guess I ever knew that, but I went out there and looked. I was just assumed I could remove that from the four door, and it doesn't have one. But and I don't remember one being on my hardtop. I could be wrong, because that was a long time ago that I did that. But you know, anyway, I've still got to, you know, get some of that stuff out of there. But I'm going to go ahead and blast this all down. Not today. This will be something later, back when, you know, later when Steve's car is gone and I've got full time to get out here and work on this, besides just on the weekends. Anyway, I want to blast all this and get it as good as I can, and maybe edge off all this undercoat. This stuff is very hard to remove, but that's where I'm at. I got to figure out what I'm going to do here. Probably remove it off the four door, because I don't think it was as bad. I don't mind replacing little small areas, but it's big pieces like this that have all these intricate curves and bends and angles and stuff. It's going to be difficult. However, having a parts car that's cut to pieces like it is, and that quarter panel piece over there, I have lots of curved and angled little areas to choose from to try to find something with my angle finder that I have. So anyway, like over here in particular, there is a bead in this, and unfortunately the very tip of the bead is gone right here. So I have, where I took the skin off the door, it has, I believe it has some beads like this. I may be wrong. If not, I can probably duplicate this with my bead roller, because that's about the size of my beads, I believe. But anyway, I may use a piece of the door skin, the actual rear structure of the door, since the skin's off of it, for this piece here, if I can find a piece that has that bead tip on it, where it goes to a rounded end. I'll just have to look. But there's the wheel, the spare tire well in the other car is good, and it's kind of a more flat surface here than it is up here. It's more rounded, but I've used some of these areas here before on the wheel well, up in here before. I did that on my first two-door post. I did, because I had to put a quarter panel on it because it was smashed, and I took it off another car, and there's a little bit of that gone, so I took it out of the old wheel well out of the other car. But there's just all kinds of curved areas you can use, just stuff you can use. But let's go check that door skin and see if that, or door structure. Well, I ended up putting everything on a pallet here to get it all out of the mud, because we've had so much rain and this just gets real muddy out here. Anyway, this is the door that I cut the skin off of, and it does have a bead down here, but I think this bead is bigger than the other one. Maybe I'll just have to look. It appears to be bigger, but I don't know. But I've also got front doors to choose from as well, so you know, I've got some stuff to look at. This is what I was talking about, that piece is not in a four door for whatever reason. I think that's kind of strange. I'd have to look in my two door, I don't even know, but I can't look in there on my hardtop because I have panels in there. So this piece, yeah, it's crusty too. It has a weird kick right here, which is kind of sucks, but it's all rotted out through there. So I'm probably gonna have to hand build that. That's gonna suck, but it's gotta be done. I don't know if you can get a little patch corner of these. I think you have to buy the whole freaking thing. Oh well, all I got's time. All right, so this is the old quarter off the car. So I cut a bunch of slice marks this way, and then I cut it across and made up pretty much a bunch of little pieces. And then I drilled a bigger hole in the top of the quarter, a little bit bigger than this. So this basically, this zap screw will fall into place instead of trying to drill through it and it putting shrapnel out there and then having something smashed in between the two pieces. So I pre-drilled a hole in the quarter. Then I did a pilot hole, a little bitty small hole in these pieces, and I held them with vice grips like this, and then I run the screws in. So these flanges are under here. Now these aren't going to stay here. These will be removed when the quarter's final welded on. But for now, for fit up, this will help with lining it up. So once I get it up here and fitted, I will clamp, vice grips all over everything to kind of hold it in place. Then I'll drill through the quarter and this piece where these are. Then I can put self-drilling screws here as well, which will also get final welded up. All the screws and stuff will be removed. This is just for mock-up or fitment. So this, having the correct contour, because it's actually off of that piece, this will help, stabilize the quarter up here. Because right now when I'm trying to put it on, the front of the quarter is so heavy it's trying to fall. So I'm hoping these kind of help me along with that. All right, well, I got it kind of roughly set up on there with my screws, and then I've clamped this back here. It's just for a baseline. I want to make it clear that I need to put the deck lid on here first before this gets welded, which this is not going to get welded anyway. I just want this, I'd like to get everything fit up to where it screws on and off and it fits perfectly that way, because I got a lot of stuff to repair underneath before that quarter goes on. A lot of blasting to do, some weld through primer stuff and all that stuff. I need to get the deck lid on here because I want to make sure that this line across the back up here and on this quarter right here, this quarter's never been altered. So I want a nice line here and a nice line there. And then wherever that deck lid falls on this side, because this quarter I can shift out or in to get my gap. So if you ever put a quarter panel with a flange on a car, you need to make sure your deck lid's on and aligned and you have something to line off of, you know what I mean? That way, you weld your quarters on and do all your stuff, and then after paint you put your deck lid on and you go to close it and it's overlapping because you didn't do that. So don't skip that step. You need to make sure it will fit. So I do have a deck lid taken off. I just need to get it put on here, but it's got some rust repair and some patching to do. So that's why I'm kind of leaving it loose for now. But before this is final welded anywhere, before it's tacked on or anything, that deck lid will be on here and aligned before that. So I just got done cutting out pieces of steel. That's the thickness of the gap. I didn't measure this. I don't know how thick it is. It perfectly fits in there. A lot of guys at pro shops, well, a lot of people in general will say 3/16, the paint stick thickness is the perfect thickness. Me personally, I think it's too thick because I use poly primer, which is a really high build. Then I go back after that's block sanded and I put a 2K urethane on, which is more thickness, and then you do sand it down, then you do base, and then you do clear. But this car's just getting primer, but I may most likely paint it down the road, years down the road. So when you go to adding all that mill thickness of paint, it tightens up that gap a little bit. So I like my gaps to be just about like that. So to me, it'll be just fine. But right now I've got this jam piece tack welded to the door. So the door is, everything's even. I have a really nice gap, and the two main body lines that I'm worried about lining up, because I can make all this, I don't care about all that. I want this line to be perfect and this line to be perfect, and those two are. And generally when you're trying to put a car all together, put a door on, you generally don't get everything perfect. They weren't perfect back then. So you just have to compromise when you're doing it. But me doing this, I can make these gaps and I can make it perfect, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I was having a lot of problem once this was lined up with the door, and I have a really beautiful gap here. So this is the same thickness here as it is up here. So this door can't go up or down anymore. It's perfect. So the problem I had after this body line was lined up was this down here was touching the back of the door. So I had to put 3 relief cuts in it so I could alter it and change it to where I want it. So I'll have to go back and weld all that up. But it's just part of it when you're trying to make something, you know what I mean? But so at this point, I need to finish cutting off this quarter. I'm letting this cool down because I have to put tack welds on here. I'm going to finish cutting the rest of this flange off where there's just a little bitty bit, because the further you go out, the more susceptible it is to warpage and oil canning. So I want to keep it tight down through here. Now here is what is going to save me having a big old seam right here. This up here is going to be nice and tight. I'm not going to get really any warpage out of it. I could right here, but I can work both panels to get this perfect. After I get it welded and ground, I can work that. This being a short little area here, I'm not going to get any warpage on that. So this out here in the middle of the ocean where all the waves are, this is where you can really get into trouble and wind up with some oil canning and, you know, a really screwed up panel. So what I did was, when I cut this off of the 4-door, this is where the door closed. This is the door line right here for the quarter. I left a little bitty bit of that flange down through there. So that's what kept its shape right here. If I would have cut that flange out, this thing would have just been wiggly and wobbly, but it kept its crown. So when I butt weld that skin edge to this, that will follow this. This is basically the leader, and that's the follower. But anyway, I'll butt weld that perfectly together, and that is the only thing that's going to save me, because all this down here is going to have to be cut and spliced and pieced together. So there's going to be a lot of welding down here. But for now, what I'd like to do today is get this trimmed. I'd like to get this door skin all trimmed down, cut down, and everything, and then go ahead and weld it to this part of the quarter, and then put more flange things on here that I can screw to. That way the quarter panel as a whole is all together. So when I pull it off, it'll be one solid 2-door quarter after this, in theory. Well, it's got a little bit of fitment issues, and I kind of don't understand it, so I'll walk you through it. Now, if you guys have ever had 4-door Tri-5 Chevys, you know what I'm talking about. The rear doors on a Tri-5 Chevy are almost touching. When you close the door, that's how tight the gaps are on those cars. They're super tight, and so the flange is still on the quarter a little bit, so I know this is exactly where it needs to be. Now, I did shave down the door until the pieces separated on the fold, so there's not a lot of material off of this door skin. But when you put it up there, and I give myself a gap so I can penetrate real good, the actual dip is off. So that's pretty significant gap difference right here. So when you can see by the hole, I've got half the hole on this piece and a little over half the hole on that piece. But anyway, so what I'm going to have to do, I cannot change this part of the car because the stainless trim the belt line trim fits on here, so I can't alter this piece, but I can alter this piece. So this has an indent right here, a press in it, and it stops about right there. So for about an, I don't know, an inch and a quarter or something, that's how far that is. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna go ahead and start tacking the back of this door in to the quarter, because this door, you can see how it's where it is just sheet metal. It doesn't really contour the quarter, but where the quarter has the flange, the quarter has the perfect gap right here, the perfect crown to it. So I want to go ahead and start tacking this in place. That way this is locked on to the quarter for the time being. So what I can do is go in here with a chisel, a wide chisel, and I can actually hit this right here and reshape this right here to get this to match. So the trim is what the back edge of the trim fits to. So I can alter this crease right here. It's basically, I'm just going to move it from here over. It won't be that big a deal. So now I'm not going to weld any of the top of this all the way down. I'm not going to weld any of this. I just want to fully weld this, and I want to fully weld. I've got to go back in on the backside with a Sharpie, and I got to mark that and then retrim it, and then I'm going to butt weld the skin to the jamb. But I'm not going to weld up along here. The reason is, once this is all fully welded and this is all fully welded, I now have almost a complete quarter panel that I can unscrew and pull off of the car. So when I go to reshape that, I can reshape it on the table. So this will end up working out really, really nice. But because I got to put patch pieces in here, you know, weld these holes up and stuff. So there's a lot of work to do. Now, I've got where the trim holes line up, like it's straight on, straight to the door point. You can kind of see where the trim used to be. That trim's going to fit on there perfectly. So, you know, this one's slotted, and this one, I'll probably just slot it. And then after I get this redone, I'll just re-drill that hole. After this is all welded and on the car, then I'll go back and run the drill bit through that, and that'll redo this edge here. This one will stay the same, and then when I'm welding the quarter, I'll just fill up what's left of this little sliver here. So this is not a big deal, but I can tell you it's taken a long time, several hours, just to try to get this fit to where I like it, because all this down here has to be made, you know, in the jam piece and all that. And there's another problem here, and this is because the quarter's got some damage on it down here down low, which I'm going to cut that bottom off and put it off another quarter. So this piece is actually kicked out right here. This was hit right here, and I tried working this when I had the quarter still on the four-door, and then I decided to just cut it off, and then I'll redo it. So you can kind of see how this is sticking up past that. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to make a slice up through here, and then that way I can change this to where I need it and then go back and re-weld it. But I'll have to put this piece in as well. This will have to be welded to this, because this is part of the door jamb, and this is a door from a four-door. Now, this is going to have a pretty wide gap down here because of it being a door jamb. There's going to be a pretty healthy gap here, but I've got some rust down here on this bottom, so I'm actually going to trim this off a little wider, and then when I build my piece into my rocker, I'll just cut part of that out, or I'm going to cut this out and then put a patch in there. So lots of little pieces I'm going to have to make and fabricate and put in, but the hardest part for me, I mean, it's not really hard, it's just I'm trying to slow my roll and pay attention to what I'm doing, because I want this to turn out good. I don't want this crown to be altered, so I'm going to go ahead and start tacking stuff in here, and you know, once that's tacked in where I like it, I can go ahead and get through the inside of the car with my Sharpie on the back side, and I can cut this to fit. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, because if I go in there and cut this piece separately and cut this to where it fits, and then I go in and tack this, it might not line up right. So I'm just going to kind of go about it my own little way here, but I'm telling you, man, this is gonna work really nice. You know, a lot of work, no doubt. I mean, it'd have been nice to buy a $1,200 quarter panel and just put it on, but for guys on a budget like myself, this is kind of the only alternative we have. But it'll work, you know what I mean? It'll work. So, and I don't want a bunch of filler in it, so no doubt it's going to take filler everywhere I put weld seams. It's going to take some filler, but I can guarantee you it's not going to be super thick. So I'm definitely liking how it's going so far. So I'm going to get to it. So I've got these self-driller screws in here holding this on, and some clamps back here. And then when you open the door, I've got some self-drilling screws in the jamb area holding it to the B-pillar. So all I'm welding right now is the B-pillar piece that I put in last week. I'm welding this to this quarter panel, and I'm welding the quarter panel to the door skin right here. I'm not welding this up through here, and I'm not welding it up and over. So when I get done welding all this and grinding today, which I don't even know if I can grind because I'm waiting on some roll-lock discs to come in, some blaze, Norton blaze, I'll be able to take out all the screws and that entire quarter panel will come off. So, you know, at that point I can turn it upside down, or, you know, and work it, whatever I need to mess with. So it's kind of cool. This is going to work, man. It's going to work really good. So I'll get back here. Now I do want to say there is a very big low spot right here below this trim. This is pretty low right here, so I need to work on this area, which I'm going to do after I take the quarter panel back off. So from the trim up, this quarter panel is really nice. So anyway, I'm going to walk back here to the back, because all body panels on these 55s are crowned. Each body panel is crowned, I should say. So this is what's referred to as marshmallows on a stick. This quarter panel will have a crown and it'll come out, and then the door will have a crown and come out, and the fender has a crown and comes out, and that's just the way they are from the factory. It's for strength in the panel, so it's, you know, strong and it doesn't flex and oil can and all that kind of stuff. So when I get the camera back here, I'll show you how true the quarter panel actually is. It has a crown going all the way to the B-pillar. There's no sharp brunt edge. It's a nice crown all the way down, if it's showing up in the camera. Now, it is kind of high right here, but this will go in when I weld in all the lower area and get it attached to the rocker. So this is all pretty loose right here, but it'll end up going in about like that. But I'm very happy with it, man. And I gotta tell you, it was a lot of effort to get this piece in, because I started tacking on it and the metal moves where it wants to go pretty much. So you just kind of have to see what it's doing. And I ended up having to cut my tack welds loose and resituate this, and I started tacking it and it did it again, and I cut it loose again and did it. So each time I kept getting a bigger gap and a bigger gap to start out with. By the time it got to the end, it was kind of taking a shape to fit actually like it's supposed to. So big mess. Now here's one of the problems that I encountered, and I surely wasn't expecting this. So these are obviously off a 4-door, the door skin and the quarter panel itself. So they have this is called the belt line on these cars. This is the belt line, and it has a piece of stainless belt line trim that snaps on here. And then right here, it's called a paint divider. It's your upper paint divider. So there is a dip right here, and you can kind of see where it works in and then kicks over. So what happens is, when you try to use a door skin, even though that quarter still has the flange on it, and that's exactly where it's at, these doors fit tight on a 4-door anyway, and I barely removed any metal from the edge of that, but I had to put a huge gap in there to get that to line up, so it didn't make any sense to me. So these points are not in the same location as a 2-door sedan to a 4-door sedan, which I think is pretty crazy. So what I ended up doing was I just kind of split the difference, which made the peak further back here. So what I ended up doing is using a chisel, and I sharpened the tip on it like that, and I drew a line in the factory one. I can't change the belt line one here. This one has to stay the same because of the stainless trim. I can alter this, and I can move the paint divider forward by welding up the old holes and drilling new ones. So this is not a big deal. So I stuck that metal chisel right on that right there, and I whacked the living crap out of it and just worked my way down with that chisel, hitting it with a hammer. And it reshaped that to where it just about matches up perfectly. So it's just barely low right here, little bitty spot about right here. So when I get the quarter panel off, I'm gonna kind of hammer this up just a little bit from the backside, and it'll be perfect. So it's all gonna match up really, really nice. So anyway, I'm going to, because my metal's touching right here, and it's almost touching right here. Once I remove all the screws and pull the quarter off, I'm gonna go in here and trim this. Just kind of grind this area right here back and this area right here back just a little bit, because I want a space in between there to put weld in. So anyway, this weld and this weld was just to hold this panel in place while I finished all this out. So anyway, I have to cut these back loose, but man, what a job having to reshape that. I've got to, this hole slotted, which is probably fine. This one most likely will have to be welded up and drilled a little bit forward, and then I'll just have to drill a new one up here. But not a big deal. It should match perfectly. I'll measure off the other side and make sure it's identical on the paint divider, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same anyway. All right, is it about, I don't know, 5 o'clock p.m. probably, 5:30, I don't even know. So I'm done for the night. I've still got more welding to do, I've got more grinding to do. So I'm out of my 2-inch Blaze Norton discs that I like to use on my angle grinder. I ordered some, but they didn't come in. So I've been going through some of my used ones that I've got in there, and I'm trying to find some that are still, you know, cut a little bit, and then some of them I'm trimming back a little bit to get some fresh meat out of them. And they're kind of working, but I'd rather just have fresh. That way it cuts real easy on brand new ones without putting a lot of heat in it and a lot of air pressure on it. So I'm just going to wait until they come in, and I've still got more spot welding to do, or tack welding to do, I should say. But I went ahead and put on the paint divider, and I put on the quarter molding. And this is 2-door quarter molding that I got from Terry. Because this car was a 4-door, so it had a split right there. It was 2 separate pieces. So now all I need to do is put the door point on, which I don't have yet. But anyway, I've got everything lined up real well. I measured off the other side, and this is exactly where the front of this starts, is right there where I've got my line drawn from the edge of the door jamb. So it's all measured out where it needs to be. But I could go ahead at this point and cut the spot welds or tack welds out of the pieces I've got in the jamb. I could go ahead and remove these and open the door and take all of the zap screws out and take all these out and undo the clamps, and that entire quarter all the way up with jamb and all would come off. But I think I'm just going to leave it on there, because it'll probably be next weekend before I can get back to messing with it again anyway. So I think right there, that'll be pretty much just fine where it's at. So I've still got more puzzle pieces to put in, but so far this is turning out really, really good, man. And I'm happy with it. It's going to turn out awesome. I love it. So you can see that. You can see that crown that goes all the way. If you follow the trim, that crown goes all the way. One big crown all across that full quarter now. And if you look at Steve's car or my car, you'll see the same crown, but my crown goes all the way to the front instead of 3 dips, because I heat shrunk and reworked my jambs and pulled everything out on the doors and made everything all straight down the side. And then Steve's car, you can see the crown on it as well. So that's using OEM metal there, you know what I mean? So the biggest hiccup that I didn't understand was the dip right there didn't match on the door skin from the 4-door to this. When I did line it up, it was a huge gap. It was about the thickness of my finger, and there's no way I removed that much material from the back of that door. So that must be the difference in a 4-door than a 2-door on that part of it. But they do share the same paint divider. But anyway, so I just reshaped that crease in that quarter panel right there, and I ended up welding up all 3 holes, trim holes for this. It takes 3 studs, 3 clips So I welded them all solid and got the measurements off the other side and re-drilled 3 new holes, and now the paint divider's bolted on and it's exactly the same measurement from there to there as that one, and up here to there. So it's spot on, man. Now I just gotta fabricate all the other crap, you know what I mean? But still got a lot more spot welding to do. Tack welding, I keep calling it spot welding. So I'm gonna wait before I patch these here. This is sunk in pretty good, and I didn't think this was at first, but I do kind of feel this right here, and this right here is kind of pulled in a little bit. So when I do take the quarter off and I turn it upside down, I can use a hammer and dolly and get all this flattened back out. Because if I went ahead and just plug welded, you know, these 2 holes and then put a patch in here and welded it all up, after it was ground, it would be indented right there. You'd see it. So I want to get it out here level before I weld it. And that way when it's ground, it kind of, you know, it looks like it's supposed to be. But I think pretty much when I'm done welding it and then get it all ground, I think if I took all the paint off and had it raw metal, I think it looked pretty nice. But I'm not going to do that because I'd have to put primer on everything. So I'm going to leave as much of the patina crap that's on there, and it's just basically protecting the bare metal. Even though it's got surface rust on it, it would do it worse to go ahead and, you know, grind it all down to bare metal, because it just sat out here with all the rain we've been having and rust. And I'm out of etch primer and epoxy primer, so I'm going to have to get some at one point. But anyway, I do need to go ahead and cut this tack loose and this tack loose, so that's probably what I'll do next weekend. And then I need to run my cutoff wheel back through here to get this open back up, because this right here is touching and that is almost touching. So anyway, when I go in and start tacking these back together, that metal's going to move and it'll tighten up and put it in a bind. So I'm going to open this up with the cutoff wheel here and here, and then go back in and level everything, and then just follow it with tack welds. So I'm happy, man. I got a beautiful gap right there. The body lines match up, trim's matching up. It has the perfect crown. But I wish I had a better quarter panel to start with, but I don't. But you know, I can work with what I got, I guess. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for today. I'm gonna pick up all the tools, sweep up my mess here, throw all the steel pieces in the back of the car, I guess. And I am done for the day. Thanks for watching.